So, Karen, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you taking the time to share your journey with us. Obviously, you've spent years driving meaningful change in the tech industry, and we're so excited to have you as part of our Inspiring Women campaign. So, first of all, Karen, if you would just want to share a little bit about yourself and your career journey.
Thank you so much. So yes, I'm Karen. I'm an inclusion consultant working across organisational improvement and policy development with specialisms in diversity in tech, gender, disability and neuroinclusion. Many people will know me as the former co-CEO of Tech Talent Charter, and before that I've had a really kind of squiggly career which has been much to my benefit in being able to expose myself to lots of different types of industries and build strong foundations of that knowledge. So I started off in kind of financial services and human capital, moved through consultancy and then looking at the skills space, and underpinning so many of the challenges I saw in each of those areas was actually a lack of inclusion, a real struggle with creating environments that encourage belonging. And so I started to turn my head to how do we tackle these underpinning challenges and really make sure that we're giving fair opportunity. And so, of course, my attention was turned to EDI and the work that we could do to really improve on that. And in my volunteer experience, I'd had lots of exposure to kind of lived experiences of different communities. I do lots of grassroots kind of work with young people that are neurodivergent and disabled advocacy, especially working with families and young people. And that had absolutely ignited a fire in me in wanting to make sure that we were really building something that was better for those generations coming through. And so absolutely that turned my head to focusing on EDI and making sure we were really stepping and making those changes that we all wanted to see.
Absolutely love that. Thank you. And I suppose as well, is there like a what would you say is your proudest kind of like moment in terms of driving diversity in tech?
Yeah, so I think for me, it's I've been able to bring data to the discussion and really allowing people to benchmark. So much of the work of TTC was creating the biggest data set of its kind and being able to quantify areas that just hadn't been able to be kind of understood in that kind of way before, really focusing on things like neuroinclusion, social mobility, and understanding actually what does the tech workforce look like and where do we need to align our attention. So being able to really drive that through data-driven insight has been, such a big part of the work that I've focused on. And then, personally, I think being able to provide those tangible ways to support organisations to make that change that really impacts people's lives has been amazing. Being able to sort of go in and see how we make those changes and then see people kind of go, actually our experience has changed and we've got a better kind of working environment. I'm feeling more fulfilled. Like it's really difficult not to feel a sense of pride in seeing that development with organisations. There's still a long way to go, but we have to continue to focus on how do we make progress rather than just idling that we've got a really significant problem. And for me, that's making sure that we're creating the right tools and we're putting them in the hands of people to make those changes now rather than waiting for something to magically happen further down the line.
Absolutely. Amazing. Thank you. And one of the questions that we did want to ask you as well was, have you faced any barriers at all as a woman in kind of like leadership positions? And if so, how did you overcome them?
Yeah, I'm aware that I'm often under a deep level of scrutiny and that I can be underestimated. And that's challenging. It really is when you feel that you are held to a higher account than colleagues. That can be really frustrating. It means it's difficult sometimes to maintain your own boundaries as well. You want to deliver in a way so you outperform so that there can be no question about your skills or ability, and sometimes that then starts to play out in an unhealthy way. So it's really important that you focus on creating those boundaries. So for me, I focused on being consistent. delivering via my actions, and actually allowing that deeper scrutiny not to scare me. I know that I'm someone that can deliver well, and actually leaning in, like, okay, I'm going to be judged by a different standard. And as much as I would love for that to change, as that's changing, I'm not going to let that hold me back. But it can be a challenge. This is also why I focus on, I've got a different style of leadership, and I'm not willing to change that, because I know it works. I am compassionate. I strive to build success building with people rather than on top of them. And so that's really important that I'm able to bring that authentically to a leadership role. And actually, when you build those communities and you allow for people to bring themselves along that journey too, you absolutely see the best out of them as well. So I think that's really important in terms of my leadership style. I'm not letting my kind of feminine traits be undermined. They are part of why I have a strong leadership style, so I lean into them.
Absolutely love that. Perfect. Thank you. What practical steps can businesses take to create an inclusive culture beyond just hiring more women?
Yeah, I know it's that's not the magic bullet. Just
Yeah.
Hiring women into a cliff edge. Like, I kind of often think of it of, you're opening the door, but actually on the other side is just you're toppling out the other side, because you have to make sure that you've got the inclusive culture if you're really going to retain that brilliant talent. So be practical in your approach. Look at auditing and reviewing your kind of compensation structures. That has to be first in a lot of this work. If you do not have pay parity and you don't have that transparency around compensation, that is always going to be a challenge. And we're starting, off on absolutely the wrong foot when we don't have that pay parity between colleagues. So audit that. Think about how you're going to drive that change if there is a discrepancy between your female, male staff and your non-binary staff. Make sure that you've actually got a actionable program in place to calibrate those differences. That is such a big piece, and it's okay to be vocal about that. Absolutely let people know that you're on a journey and that you're working to get to that pay parity. We talk a lot about flexible work policies, and obviously there's so much in the news around working from home and the benefits and productivity. I would say that flexible work policies is not won and lost just on if you're working from home. It's looking at your hybrid setup. It's looking at the other flexibilities that you can offer. And often that makes such a big difference for people if you're able to offer a later start, an earlier finish, an adjustment to when people take their lunch breaks, looking at 9-day fortnights, all of those variances, and being really open about what's available is so helpful for people to understand, okay, this can work for me, and that doesn't need to be tethered necessarily to people with caring responsibilities, although it serves them best. This is absolutely about people being able to live the life that they want to lead, as well as being really successful in their roles, and for them to be really healthy as they're progressing through their careers. I think establishing sponsorship programs is equally important. Making sure that sponsors see this as a value exchange, rather than they're coming in with power and authority and that they're delivering and gifting something to whoever they're sponsoring. Absolutely, there is so much to learn in those relationships, and seeing that as a brilliant way to have a different exposure to what's going on in your organisation, different thoughts, different lived experience. Really make sure that that's valued in those relationships and building those programs. And then, of course, making sure that you're reviewing your kind of organisational development processes. Do you have diverse perspectives in how you're building the structures of your organisation? If you don't, then you're very likely to be leaving communities behind. Now, this isn't making every decision by committee, but it's absolutely recognising that there are changes and structures that you can have in place that will be making it incredibly difficult for people to progress in your organisation, recognising them and making those changes. I don't think when we get get to the crux of it, people would like to think that they are standing by in just systems, and we are if we don't really open our eyes to what those systems look like. And of course, I would say this, but reviewing the right data. So beyond hiring measures, look at what retention looks like in your organisation, promotion rates and satisfaction across demographic groups, and really look at the sentiment of how people feel about your culture in your organisation. I always like to kind of come back to, how do people feel on a Sunday night? Are they looking, I mean, for most people, you would hope that they're feeling kind of neutral about. I think that's practical. I mean, as much as I'd love to say everyone is raring to go for Monday morning,
Right.
what you want is that someone isn't worried about the week ahead, that they haven't been able to recover from the week before. And I think putting yourself in those shoes, making sure that you're reviewing sentiment data so that you understand actually how your people feel about working at your organisation is really important. And there's so many ways that you can approach that. But yeah, reviewing the right data and making sure that you're looking at from an intersectional point of view, really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was absolutely spot on. One of the other questions that I wanted to ask you as well was, what role does allyship play in making meaningful DE&I changes? And what advice would you give to allies who want to do more?
Yeah, I mean, allyship is essential for creating meaningful change because it transforms DE&I from being seen as someone else's problem to a shared responsibility. And that's absolutely important. What we have to keep in mind is that you can't self-label yourself as an ally.
Yeah.
That is a label that is bestowed upon you from doing this work. So I think this is important to kind of recognise that just because you call yourself one doesn't mean that your actions are necessarily aligning with being one. So it's really making sure that actions and words line up. So that when we think about those sort of top tips for being an effective ally, we want to look at leveraging privilege and influence to advocate for underrepresented colleagues, using the different opportunities that you have throughout your day, your week, to make sure that you are aware to your influence, to your privilege, to your power, and seeing, are you using that in an inclusive way? Making sure that you're amplifying marginalised voices, giving those opportunities, and not speaking on behalf of, but recognising that you're creating environments where people can advocate for themselves as well. And the one that's really critical for me is take on the emotional labour of educating yourself rather than just relying on underrepresented colleagues to inform you. Now, it's absolutely great when you're able to go on that journey and learn from one another, but the burden shouldn't be on other people to make you more informed. There is so many resources available for you really to upskill yourself in a way of taking on and learning more about other communities and lived experience, and keep going on that journey. That's not a one and done. That is absolutely making sure that you are exposing yourself to different thoughts, experiences, and really driving your own knowledge journey. I think when we consider the different opportunities allies have, intervening when witnessing microaggressions and exclusionary behaviours is a really powerful way that you can show up and make sure that you are not someone that's willing to stand by those types of behaviours. I think is really vital if you want to be a really strong ally. And I think the final point would be, listen more than you speak. When you're engaging with underrepresented colleagues about their experiences, listen. Make sure that you're actively listening and accept that there may be times where you feel discomfort, but that's part of a growth process. And rather than becoming defensive, recognise that that's on you going through a growth process, and it's okay to sometimes have to go through those feelings of discomfort, and recognise actually that as a strength, that you are growing, you're thinking about things in a way that perhaps you've never thought about them. And that's really important, going back to the taking on the emotional labour. Recognise that's a you experience rather than putting that on whoever you're kind of learning from in that moment.
Absolutely. That was, really good tips in there. So thank you for sharing those. Also wanted to ask as well, what advice do you have for women who want to break into the tech industry?
So what I would say is this is a changing industry and we need you. So I absolutely, when you look at the headlines, sometimes it can feel difficult to feel like, okay, is this a space that I will be valued in? Can I see myself having a strong career here? But this is a changing industry. We are making progress. Now, I would like that progress to be more speedy, but this is a changing industry and we need you. I would say focus on building your technical skills and your business acumen. You will already have a strong set of soft skills and they are important, but what I would say is absolutely focus on those technical skills and understanding business fundamentals. Really try to get exposure through your different mentorship, sponsorship, through colleagues for those areas. Really focus on that growth and build your brag book. Make sure that you are keeping note of your successes. Look at how you're making your growth technically, and try to get exposure to the new and emerging projects within your teams, so that you're not just working on things like legacy tech. Now, it's fine to be working on those things as part of a plethora of different opportunities, but if we really want to see that growth for you, you absolutely want to focus on those areas. And as we look at the different opportunities emerging in terms of upskilling, reskilling, there are so many more ways to get into tech now. And if you've already got a firm understanding of kind of business and those soft skills, actually the technical skills are not easy to learn, but they are not, that's almost the easiest bit to learn in becoming a really accomplished technologist. So I would say absolutely dive in. We need you, and we can't make this change without more people from underrepresented groups coming into the industry.
Absolutely. And I think this next question as well kind of follows on really nicely from that as well, so thank you. The next question was, obviously many women do experience imposter syndrome. Have you personally ever struggled with it, and how did you navigate it?
Yeah, so imposter syndrome is a really tricky one, and I think that it is a very real sensation that many people from underrepresented communities experience. What I would say though is there is a difference in actually if you are being discriminated against, and there has been a muddying of the water a little of where I've heard women speak and they tell me their experiences. I'm like, actually that's not an impression that you have around your abilities. You are being discriminated against because of your gender or whatever lens we might be talking about. And I think we must make that distinction that actually sometimes what we're facing, and we're creating kind of an introspection of it being imposter syndrome, we're facing real discrimination, and we have to kind of address that. I think that, many female leaders do have times where they experience imposter syndrome. I certainly have felt that way myself. Sometimes I've found myself in rooms that I'm like, gosh, I don't know how I found myself here. And it's so easy to kind of play to your insecurities. But what I've learned is that you don't often accidentally find yourself in those rooms. And actually recognizing that I have some skill. I may not have every single skill that is represented in this room. I may not have the power or authority that's represented in this room, but I'm here for a reason and I'm going to deliver on that. And that starts to take away a little bit of that sense of, why am I here? Am I good enough? All of those kind of senses go, why am I here? I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that bit rather than kind of hearing those echoes of, you're not good enough. Why, what are they going to learn from you? Really reflecting on, actually, I have a strength and delivering that back. But it can be a really challenging area. I do want us to evolve the conversation though about imposter syndrome, because it almost feels like now we expect women should go through those feelings, and it almost becomes self-fulfilling in that we there is this journey that you should doubt your abilities, and I think we need to kind of knock that on the head a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's one of those things where as soon as it starts kind of becoming a bit more of a topic, that it does kind of get like a bit muddied in the waters as well. So yeah, absolutely. And also, if you could give one piece of advice to organisations who are looking to make a lasting impact in gender equity, what would it be?
So focus on systemic accountability rather than symbolic gestures. So organisations that truly advance gender equality don't just celebrate milestones like International Women's Day with events and messaging. They build accountability mechanisms. They drive continuous improvement year round. They really focus on things like regular pay equity audits and transparent results. They make sure that they tie leadership compensation to measurable D&I outcomes. You know, they have clear advancement pathways for individuals, and they don't do things like saying they need to have a female being interviewed for a role that they know that absolutely is they've already made a decision about a candidate. I hear this time and time again. It really frustrates me. And I think this is, don't waste women's time. That is not what gender equity looks like. Value their experience and value their time, and really make sure that you are making meaningful progress to treat gender equity as a strategic business imperative with the same rigour that you apply to financial performance and product development, not as a separate HR initiative that's going to be fixed by someone over there. Absolutely bring it into the guts of what you're doing. I think that that's how we really do see change. And when we see organisations adopt that, we absolutely see the benefits for them. This isn't a kind of a pseudoscience. We know this really does make a difference.
Yeah, definitely. Perfect. And then I just have one more question for you as well. If you could give one piece of advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Oh gosh, maybe Karen. So I would say, if I was going back in time in that time machine, I would say that absolutely trust your unique perspective. It is your greatest strength. It's not something to minimise. The qualities that you feel that might feel different or out of place right now, whether it's your analytical approach, your cultural background, your sensitivity or your interests, they will become a valuable asset to you in the right environment. And absolutely have confidence in yourself that those unique perspectives will help you drive through your career. I would also say that actually the career you think, what your career is going to look like, the world is going to look very different. And all of that time and effort you've put into thinking about what that's going to look like is going to look very different. And so I'd say, kind of in a world of chaos, kindness is stable, and lean into that. And I think that that is something that 16-year-old Karen didn't know, but did do, and it has served me well. And I thank her for leaning into that kindness and building that compassionate career, because it would be disappointing to stand here without having had the opportunity to build on those foundations that she created.
Absolutely love that. Amazing. Karen, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today and hearing your journey. So thank you so much for all the amazing work that you do and have done. It's been amazing. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.